I won't approve any paid leave for you. I couldn't believe my ears. You always challenge me. You don't need to come back. Having been told this, even I had reached my breaking point. Are you really sure? She must have been taken aback by my response. Her eyes widened in surprise. Too bad. My name is Nancy, and I turned 28 this year. I've been working at the Can-Do Corporation for 10 years, making me an experienced employee at a young age. While my family wasn't wealthy, my parents took great care of me. Being an only child, I rarely got new things. Most of my clothes were hand-me-downs from cousins or neighbors. It was rare to get new outfits. Still, I was quite content. Neighbors and relatives showered me with love, and I have fond memories of going on picnics in local parks with my parents during weekends. Perhaps it was out of sympathy, but I'm still close with my cousins and we keep in touch regularly. Growing up surrounded by love, when I was in 12th grade, I served as the student council president and had excellent grades. My class teacher suggested I pursue further studies. Despite being offered a scholarship to college based on my grades, I declined. I'm not interested in going to college. I want to work as a public servant. My parents tried to persuade me otherwise, but considering the costs of living alone, I went against their wishes and became a public servant. I just wanted to relieve my parents of any burden as soon as possible. But then, my father was diagnosed with a severe illness and passed away before I could repay his kindness. I decided to take care of my mother in place of my father, continuing to live with her. In the hustle and bustle of daily life, time flew as I experienced various facets of working life. By the time 5 years had passed, I'd become a respected figure in the office, leading a comfortable life. I've been given the responsibility of training newcomers and occasionally acting on behalf of my boss. Moreover, the bonuses were good, allowing me to give about $600 monthly to my parents. In my personal life, I enjoyed trips with friends, colleagues, and my boyfriend. One day, our manager was transferred and replaced by a new one. This new female manager was said to be the president's daughter. Rumor had it she had been loafing around, relying on her father's wealth. Unable to stand by and watch, the president decided to put her in a responsible position to teach her some life lessons. Only the president and I knew this. Just because she was the president's daughter, many in the company, who knew she was hired due to her background and had little real-world experience, didn't think highly of her. The work environment started getting tense, and the atmosphere was increasingly stifling. And to think the trouble would eventually come my way. It happened when I made her a cup of hot coffee upon her request. "What's this? Are you trying to annoy me?" "I made it just as you told me." She glared at me and threw the hot coffee in my direction. "Ouch! What are you doing?" Unable to avoid it, I held my right arm that got splashed with coffee and glared back at her. "How is this according to my instructions? I said I wanted it warm with extra milk and sugar." "I made it warm with 2 glasses of milk and 2 scoops of sugar." "It's too hot. And it's common sense to take 4 glasses of milk and 3 scoops of sugar." She again acts as if her own common sense is the world's common sense and imposes her values on others. "I'm sorry. I'll make you another one right away." This is why I don't like high school grads. I heard from my father that you're competent and trusted by everyone. I have much to learn. It's only because of the support of everyone here that I seem competent. As she continued with her snide remarks, the pain in my burned arm intensified. My mind was occupied with trying very hard to resist the urge to get away from this place and cool my burnt arm as soon as possible. "I was looking forward to meeting you after my father spoke so highly of you. But what a disappointment. I wonder how you won him over." Upon hearing her harsh words, a nearby employee tried to step in and help, but I signaled that I was okay, trying not to get noticed by her. Next, that employee would become the target of her. Those who had been targeted by her so far were mentally driven into a corner and forced to resign voluntarily. And this time, it seems that I've become the target of her. As I was pondering how to resolve the situation, she forcibly grabbed my burned arm and squeezed the burned area tightly. "You've got guts to ignore me. Don't think you'll get away with this." I grimaced in pain. Satisfied with my reaction, she released my arm and ordered me to make coffee again. I excused myself and hurried to the pantry to cool the affected area. It sucks. After work, I immediately visited a dermatologist and got prescribed an ointment, but it never completely healed and left a mark, so I dressed in a way that others couldn't see, to avoid causing concern. From that day on, the harassment from her escalated. "What's this document? Nothing but mistakes. Don't take your job lightly." What exactly is wrong with the document? While trying to gauge her mood, I asked, and she threw it at me. "There's no way there could be mistakes in this practice document I did. And yet, to be pointed out like this with a red pen, it's unpleasant." I sighed at the immature behavior of such a grown adult. To be frank, this document clearly needs to be redone due to its inadequacies. You came into this department without understanding anything. I would appreciate it if you could accept the mistakes honestly and acquire knowledge appropriate for a manager. As a trainer, I've been assigning tasks to her, utilizing the experience I had with new employees so far, but nothing seemed to get through to her, a lump of pride. "Don't talk back. You guys should just do everything. I'm the manager, so I don't have to do this kind of stuff." That's not how it works. Besides, this is what the president personally told us. You're desperate to be liked by my father, huh? Weren't you from a fatherless family? I was a little surprised when she suddenly brought up the topic of my family. Furthermore, I had never talked about this with her before. To be precise, you have only your mother now, right? Despite working so hard in a poor family, your father wasn't rewarded and fell ill. We're at work now. Let's stop discussing irrelevant topics. I just thought of having a little interaction. What a boring woman. Even I couldn't hide my irritation when she made fun of my parents. You're getting angry, huh? That's hilarious. My parents are very wonderful and respectable people. You, who know nothing, have no right to say anything. She quickly responded to the slight drop in my voice tone. So that's your true nature, huh? Is it okay to have that attitude with the president's daughter? Maybe I should report to my father about your true nature and how I've been treated badly by you. Feel free to do so. Please correct the test document properly and submit it by today. I'm definitely gonna drive you out. As I turned my back on her, she whispered in a voice only I could hear, but I ignored her and returned to my seat. Afterward, her sarcasm continued, but I managed to get her to learn the basics. It's still a long road ahead. Even though they were basics, it included minor things like detailed computer operations and types of documents. I sat on a bench installed on the office rooftop drinking canned coffee during the break to soothe my exhausted body. While thinking about my future, I suddenly received a call from an unknown number on my smartphone. Hello? Is this Nancy? This is Saveview Hospital. Your mother was urgently transported here, but she's in a critical condition. Can you come right away? My mind went blank, and I couldn't remember much afterward. I left an early leave notice on her desk first and caught a taxi to the hospital. Upon arriving at the hospital and explaining the situation at the reception, a nurse guided me to where my mother was. Mom, this can't be true. There lay my mother, with a beautiful and gentle expression, asleep. According to the doctor, my mother had collapsed at her workplace. By the time she arrived at the hospital, they were in a state of believing in miracles. Indeed, my mother's heart wasn't strong since the past. Yet, the symptoms were stable, and there were no issues during regular checkups, but the mental strain since my father passed away might have affected her, perhaps. For a time, I sobbed, hugging my mother tightly. After coming home with my mother, as the funeral date has been set, I called female manager to ask for my first ever paid leave. I'm sorry for leaving early today and causing trouble. My mother just passed on, so could I take about a week off for the funeral and all the other stuff that comes with it? Oh, so that's why you left early when I wasn't around? It was an emergency with my mother. Her cold and harsh tone hit hard, considering how down I was. I won't approve any paid leave for you. I couldn't believe my ears. In the 10 years I've been here, I've never taken a day of paid leave. So what? I've contributed so much to this company, so shouldn't I be able to take paid leave to say goodbye to my mother? You always challenge me. You don't need to come back. Having been told this, even I had reached my breaking point. Are you really sure? I'll take you up on that offer. She started ranting, but I unilaterally cut the call without a second thought. The funeral went smoothly. I couldn't just sit grieve, and I kept myself busy, handling various tasks and sending out thank you notes to those who'd been so kind. Took my mind off things for a bit. She tried reaching out multiple times, but I ignored every attempt. A bit later, I got a call from the president, so I made my way to the office after 2 weeks. I walked straight to the president's office. On my way, I bumped into 2 coworkers who consoled me. I'm sorry, but I'm going to the president's office first. Their kindness made me feel a bit better. It's Nancy. May I come in? After knocking and asking permission, I was let in promptly. Hey there, been a while. Heard you've been out of touch for 2 weeks. Doesn't sound like you. My apologies. You see, I laid out everything, not sugarcoating how she had been treating other employees and myself. Hearing negative stuff about his own daughter must have hurt him, but the president listened to every word. I apologize for my daughter's actions. To be honest, my wife and I spoiled her, and this is the outcome. No worries. I think my parents must have felt the same way as parents. Seeing my awkwardness, the president smiled gently. Nancy, you're truly a wonderful lady. My daughter's situation was my judgment error. I've spoken to those who've resigned in the past 2 weeks. I can't apologize enough for that. To the best of my knowledge, this was the first time I'd ever seen the president looking so troubled. Ever since you stopped coming to the department my daughter works in, things have gone haywire. Just the other day, the entire team staged a group protest. Really? I had no idea things had escalated that much. So, what are you going to do about it? The president wore a sad expression for a moment but quickly returned to the person I knew. So I need your help. It's easy for me to have my daughter resign, but that alone won't satisfy all employees. Can you help us? Looking into the president's earnest eyes, I made up my mind. Understood. I'm more than happy to assist. And so, the sanctions against her began. Hey, how long do you plan on taking time off? The exasperated female manager finally reached out. Wasn't it you who told me not to come in? It's strange, I'm just following your orders. Don't give me that. We're in chaos here. Get to the office now. Reluctantly, I changed into my work clothes and headed to the office. However, there wasn't a single employee present. It was eerily quiet, just like working on a weekend. It's a weekday today, right? Feels weird. It was when I muttered to myself in an empty office. I heard yelling from a woman and the sound of something being thrown from my department. Peeking cautiously inside, I saw her causing a ruckus. What's going on? I called out from behind her. She swiftly turned and grabbed at me. It's all your fault. Ever since you stopped coming, everyone else followed suit. Now I can't get in touch with anyone. How will you make up for this? I'm not quite following. Can you please not shift the blame? I calmly told her. She let me go and pushed me away. Such an infuriating woman. Even my father won't help. What's going on? How long has it been since everyone stopped coming? Half a day. Because of that, I've been handling calls which I've never done, and I have no clue what to do anymore. The slumped figure of her was pitiful. Her hair was a mess, and the nail polish that she wouldn't remove despite numerous reminders was now chipped. She must have hung her jacket somewhere. There were noticeable frays here and there on her jacket. Seeing her, who had always acted like a queen, now in such a state, I couldn't help but laugh. Serves you right. What did you say? This is on you. What did you think of everyone? No one's going to follow someone who just waves their power around without any real skills. As I firmly told her, she approached with her face turning red. Say that one more time. You really want to be banned from the company? Well, I'd like to stay if you resign. Well then, you're fired. I'll be taking over this company. What a pity for you. Too bad. She was wearing an eerie smile, and for some reason, she had a triumphant look on her face. I answered, all right. It was a short time, but thank you very much. It must have been an unexpected reaction. She had her eyes wide open in surprise. You do realize you're fired, right? Of course. Now I should pack up my things. I carefully made my way to my desk, avoiding the papers scattered on the floor. Once there, I started pulling out stuff from the drawers. Wait. Are you really quitting? Yes, why? I asked, tilting my head. Well, shouldn't you at least finish up today's work? Her earlier confidence had disappeared, and she seemed desperate. Do you know that it's illegal to reject a properly justified paid leave request without a valid reason? Huh? It's a violation of labor laws, you know. It's mandated by law. Her face turned ashen. She was clearly in turmoil, but I continued. We're all human. I understand there are compatibility issues. But that doesn't mean you should drive people into a corner. You're unfit to be a manager. Makes me wonder what your folks are like. Who the hell do you think you are? Insulting my parents like that? You're not getting off easy. Well, you insulted my parents too, so you're not getting off easy either. She, shaking with rage, tried to put on a brave face. Our worlds are entirely different. Don't lump me with you. You're really despicable. I heard you said the same thing and drove those who left into a corner. That's right. They treated me like I was worthless, so I drove them into a corner as far as I could. Felt so refreshing when they were gone. I sighed deeply, shifting my gaze to the corridor. Curious, she followed my gaze, muttering, Father? Why are you here? There stood the president. As the president stepped into the department, he walked directly to her. Father, there's been a misunderstanding. No need for explanations. I've got evidence of your deeds. No, they just envied me for my skills and set me up. I did nothing wrong. The president lashed out at her, who tried to justify her actions. You idiot! Because you're so incompetent, I was hoping the competent employees would reform you. Yet under your lead, in the past few months, our performance plummeted and even caused losses to the company. But you made me a manager, so that means you had faith in me, hadn't you? I promise I'll meet your expectations this time. No. If I didn't give you a position, you'd have run away. The president's imposing demeanor made her buckle. I never even thought of letting you take over the company. This time for sure, I'll transfer you to the countryside to reform you from the ground up. Please, have mercy. Look who's talking. We'll get constant updates from your new location. And the folks there are pretty reliable, so brace yourself. Turning pale, she lay on her back, crying and laughing hysterically. I chirped, too bad. With a bright and cheerful voice, I said that to her. Later that day, without anyone to see her off, the former female manager left the company. The next day, the employees, enjoying the day off declared by the president, returned to work jubilant. With the departure of the former female manager, peaceful days were restored, and smiles returned to the employees' faces. Meanwhile, the former female manager started from scratch in a rural town where there were no conveniences or entertainment. There, her family's influence didn't matter, and she was strictly schooled by her colleagues every day. As the days passed, she began to change, and finally, she started to speak respectfully and became receptive to feedback from others, as reported by the president. The most surprising thing was receiving an apology call from her. At first, I listened to her, but at the end of the call, she begged, "I've reflected enough. I want you to ask the president to let me return." Of course, my answer was no. I ignored further calls and blocked her number. The president personally contacted those who had resigned due to her and invited them back. As a result, the company's performance quickly recovered, even surpassing its previous state. As for me, I was sitting in the seat of the manager, which became vacant after she left. When the president personally appointed me, everyone in the department was even happier than I was. While the managerial job is tougher than I imagined and I am a bit overwhelmed by my sudden career move, with the support of the employees, I am doing well. Having been both physically and mentally hurt, especially with burns, I have been compensated with settlement money deducted from the former female manager's salary, which has been added to my own pay. Thanks to that, my life has become very comfortable. Recently, my boyfriend of 2 years proposed to me, and I am over the moon. We are expecting a child next year, and both of us are excited. Even though I have just entered my second trimester, we are already fully prepared for the birth. I once almost died, but I was able to recover and I feel like I've been reborn. I'm ready to start my life over, but I can't be bothered to take care of an old woman. Although my husband was able to recover from his illness because I became a donor, he never expressed any gratitude. In fact, he handed me a business card of a divorce lawyer. Although I felt frustrated and anxious, I wasn't shocked. Ever since he regained his mobility, he had been out and about, which had already made me suspicious. And now, I am the one who is sick. I have been diagnosed with stomach cancer. Fortunately, it is not advanced, but I will have to start treatment with surgery and chemotherapy. I am filled with anxiety and I can't believe he is abandoning me like this. All my love and trust for my husband has vanished in an instant. The hardest part is that, for our daughter, Kate, he is undoubtedly her only father. I feel guilty about her becoming fatherless, but with my upcoming battle against the disease, I don't have the energy to try to repair our relationship. A month later, I received a series of aggressive calls from my husband, which I ignored. Eventually, he showed up at my hospital room and dropped a bombshell. My name is Christy Young, a 29-year-old housewife. I have been married to Mike, who is a year older than me, for 7 years, and we have a lovely 5-year-old daughter, Kate. I used to work full-time as a regular employee even after we got married, but I quit when I went on maternity leave. I really wanted to take it slow and raise Kate, but due to the economic downturn, we couldn't afford to live on my husband's salary alone. So, as soon as Kate was able to go to daycare, I started working again. I got a job at an apparel company where my sister-in-law, Lisa, is the president. They were looking for an office worker, and since I had similar experience from my previous job, they hired me right away. Although I am a relative, I was not pampered, but the atmosphere in the office was good, and there were many senior mothers, so it was easy to consult about childcare and take leaves for sudden fevers of my child. I am really grateful that I was introduced to such a good workplace. However, it was extremely tough to juggle work, housework, and childcare. In the morning, I prepared breakfast for my husband and Kate, made my husband's lunchbox, sent him off, took Kate to daycare, and went to work. After work, I picked up Kate, went shopping, came home, cleaned, bathed Kate, and prepared dinner. By the time I finished preparing Kate's meal, my husband came home, so I prepared his dinner, and while he was eating, I put Kate to bed. Although my days were hectic, my husband was not very cooperative with housework or childcare. Even if Kate had a fever in the morning and I was busy taking care of her, he would still say, "Where's my breakfast?" without any concern. When I asked him to do the grocery shopping because I had to work late, he complained, "I am tired from work." I was tired from work too, but I didn't have the energy to argue, so I ended up doing everything by myself. Our lives took a sudden turn. When my husband was advised to have a detailed examination after his company health check showed some bad results. My husband didn't want to get retested because he said he didn't feel any pain and was fine, But he started to feel a little uncomfortable in his daily life, with unexplained bruises all over his body, bleeding gums just from brushing his teeth. It would be terrible if he ignored it and it turned out to be a serious illness. We have to think about Kate's future, so I asked him to get a thorough checkup, and it turned out he had leukemia.
Why me?
He was shocked to hear a familiar disease name. However, leukemia is not incurable nowadays. There are many cases of remission and social reintegration through chemotherapy and bone marrow transplantation. I decided to support my husband, who was on the verge of despair and self-destruction, and accompany him through the treatment. He took a leave of absence from work and was admitted to the hospital immediately. As for me, I had to manage work, housework, childcare, and supporting my husband's treatment. I reached my limit before my husband did. The stress of hospitalization made him lash out at me more than before, which was one of the reasons. I knew it was misplaced anger, but I was honestly exhausted from going to work, taking care of Kate, doing housework, and visiting the hospital in my spare time. That's when Lisa, my sister-in-law, reached out to me. "Why don't you live with me? I can help with the housework and taking care of Kate." She was the president of a company, and I knew from working at the same place that she was always on the front lines of sales. She made a point of picking up feedback from the field rather than leaving everything to her subordinates, which made it easier for the staff to exchange opinions. So, I knew how busy she was. "I really can't impose on you. You're busy too. If you collapse now, Kate will be the one who suffers the most, right? I will support Mike as much as I can. You should rely on those who can help you now," Lisa said firmly, and I couldn't hold back my tears. I was worried about Mike, Kate's future, and my own health. I was really grateful for Lisa's presence, and her encouraging words saved me. Mike's parents had already passed away, and Lisa was living alone in her parents' house. I've always thought it was too big for one person. I didn't want to sell it because it has memories of my parents, but I'm glad you two can come. She warmly welcomed me and Kate. Living with Lisa was very comfortable. We had always gotten along well, and it felt like I had gained a real sister. Lisa, who had been living alone for a long time, was good at housework. She actively helped out, which made my life much easier than before. At that time, there was hope for my husband's treatment. I was found to be a compatible donor for his bone marrow transplant. As soon as Mike was diagnosed with leukemia, Lisa and I underwent testing to be bone marrow donors. The probability of finding a compatible donor is 1 in 4 among siblings. And it is said to be 1 in several hundred to several tens of thousands among unrelated people. We were devastated when we heard that Lisa's bone marrow was not compatible, but when we found out that I could be a donor for Mike, he was overjoyed. To provide bone marrow as a donor, I had to be hospitalized for several days. During that time, I had to take time off work and couldn't take care of Kate. It was a burden on Lisa, but she didn't show any signs of annoyance. "Thank you so much for doing this for my brother. I will do everything I can to support you, so don't worry about anything. Just take care of yourself now." Encouraged by Lisa, I underwent bone marrow extraction surgery for my husband. After the surgery, Mike had to spend some time in a sterile room, being careful of infections while resting. I was discharged from the hospital after a few days and, thanks to my sister-in-law's kindness, took an additional 2 or 3 days off work before returning. The hematopoietic stem cells transplanted into Mike seemed to be working properly, and after a few weeks, he was able to move to a general ward. When I took our daughter, Kate, to visit Mike in the general ward, there was a nurse in the room. Seeing Kate after a long time, Mike smiled happily. "Mr. Young is recovering well. He is still young and strong, so if he continues to make good progress, I think he can return to work soon. Thank you very much, as always." The nurse smiled and left the room. As she said, Mike's condition stabilized, and he was able to be discharged a few months later. Although he still needed to rest at home, the 4 of us, including Lisa, started living together in the in-laws' house. I had to take on all the responsibilities of work, housework, childcare, and taking care of Mike again, but it was less burdensome thanks to Lisa living with us. Moreover, Lisa is the type of person who can speak her mind clearly to Mike. You don't have to push yourself too hard, but you should practice doing some housework as part of your rehabilitation. Hearing this, Mike reluctantly started helping with the chores. However, since he was still recovering, I often ended up helping him, and eventually, he stopped doing even the things he could do, knowing that I would come to help if he dawdled. I still feel sluggish. Using that as an excuse, he wouldn't even try to get up from the sofa. When the doorbell rang while I was preparing dinner, and I asked him to answer it because I couldn't leave what I was doing, he sighed heavily and complained. They told me to rest, and you're being demanding. I couldn't help but think that it was not too much to ask, but only Mike knew the extent of his pain. So, I believed him and made an effort to move myself, even if it was a bit of a strain. Perhaps because I overexerted myself again, my health started to deteriorate. It became harder to eat, and Lisa started worrying that I might have lost weight. By this time, Mike had almost fully recovered and had returned to work. Even though I no longer had to take care of Mike, the household chores and childcare didn't decrease. Even when I was not feeling well, Mike, who had regained his energy, started going out alone more often on his days off. He didn't seem to notice that I was unwell and didn't offer to help with the chores. When I asked him where he was going and with whom, he got angry and said,
I have a private life too.
Eventually, the stress caused my stomach to ache continuously, and Lisa suggested I get a full medical checkup. Since Mike had been seriously ill, I thought it would be better to address any issues early for Kate's sake. As a result, this time I was diagnosed with stomach cancer. Fortunately, the progression seemed to be slow, but still, hospitalization and painful chemotherapy were necessary. At the sudden news of my hospitalization, Kate seemed anxious, but her father was out for the day, and he couldn't comfort her. Instead, my sister-in-law, Lisa, stayed with Kate. To avoid disturbing me while I prepared for the hospital, Lisa took Kate out shopping. While I was silently preparing, my husband, Mike, came home.
What's going on? Are you going on a trip or something?
I yelled at Mike's carefree demeanor.
I have stomach cancer.
Stomach cancer.
I've been feeling sick lately, so I went for a checkup today. That's the diagnosis. I need to be hospitalized.
Hospitalized.
What about the house during that time? Are you leaving it to my sister?
I was shocked that the first thing he worried about after hearing about my hospitalization was not concern for me. Granted, it's not a matter of life and death because the progression is slow. But still, facing his wife who is about to undergo painful chemotherapy, the first thing he asks about is the house, which I found utterly disappointing.
Well, this is just perfect.
Huh? Divorce me.
What?
I was confused and bewildered by the sudden request. I had always supported him devotedly when he was ill. Now that I'm the one who's ill, he turns his back on me.
Having nearly died once and being able to recover, I feel reborn. I want to start over, and I don't want to take care of an old woman.
Despite my being the donor that allowed Mike to recover, not once did he express gratitude. In fact, he handed me a business card of a divorce lawyer.
You don't even wear makeup at home. I can't see you as a woman anymore. Even if you say that, I'm busy with work, housework, and childcare. I don't have time for makeup. That's just an excuse. On top of that, you have cancer now. I can't deal with that.
I was bewildered by Mike's angry demands to sign the papers quickly. I was already anxious about the cancer diagnosis. However, despite my frustration and anxiety, I wasn't shocked. Ever since he regained his mobility, Mike had been out and about, and I had been feeling suspicious since then. With this illness, all my love and trust for him vanished. What pained me was that for Kate, he was undeniably her only father. I felt guilty about making her a child of a single parent, but with the battle against cancer ahead, I didn't have the energy to repair my relationship with Mike.
Humph.
Now we are just strangers. Mike smiled satisfactorily.
Hey, is it over?
Don't just come in like that.
But you're taking too long.
Suddenly, an unfamiliar young woman appeared at the entrance. She wore flashy makeup and was dressed in a stylish dress, a beautiful woman. But on closer inspection, her face was familiar.
Are you the nurse from the hospital where Mike was admitted?
It was hard to tell at first glance because she was in plain clothes, but she was the nurse assigned to my husband's room at some point. Apparently, she seems to have been his mistress.
Yes, she is. She supported me devotedly when I was sick. Much more than you ever did.
I was dumbfounded by Mike's boastful statement. Supporting a patient devotedly is a fundamental part of a nurse's job. It's frustrating to be compared to her in that regard.
Get out of this house right now. This is my family home, after all.
And then he said that assertively. Indeed, this is my husband's family home, but it is now under the name of my sister-in-law, Lisa. However, if I divorce Mike, Lisa and I will become strangers. More than parting with Mike, it's sad to be separated from Lisa, who is kind, reliable, and has a good relationship with my daughter, Kate. But there's nothing I can do about it. I packed my suitcase with just the essentials, in addition to preparing for my hospitalization. I no longer have any love for my husband, and I want to get out of this situation as soon as possible. While I was silently preparing, Lisa and Kate, who had gone shopping, came back.
We're home. Oh, do we have a guest?
Lisa seemed surprised to see an unfamiliar woman, and Kate, clinging to Lisa, seemed to not understand the situation. So, I clearly stated,
I am going to divorce Mike.
What? Lisa looked as shocked as I felt. Then, as if realizing something, she handed Kate some snacks she had just bought and told her to eat them in the next room. With only adults left, Lisa immediately glared at my husband.
What are you thinking?
Mike recoiled for a moment when Lisa, not me, confronted him.
He's going to divorce me and start a new life with that woman over there. Since you and I will become strangers, he told me to leave.
Lisa's eyes widened in disbelief at my words.
Christy is having a tough time, and you? How selfish can you be? You're the one who should leave. Never show your face to me again.
Lisa firmly told off Mike, who clicked his tongue, snorted, and left the house. The woman glanced down at me, smirked triumphantly, and followed Mike.
Christy, I'm really sorry.
After the two left, Lisa looked at me apologetically. I felt guilty for making her, who had done nothing wrong, feel that way.
Please don't make that face. You've done so much for me, Lisa, and I can't thank you enough.
And I felt a bit relieved that Lisa had decisively cut off Mike.
Even if you divorce Mike, I'll always be on your side, Christy.
We had already vacated the house we lived in before Mike fell ill. Having been kicked out by Lisa, Mike now had no place to live, but he probably planned to move in with that woman. Although he had insurance and subsidies, Mike shouldn't have much savings left after his major illness. Well, it's none of my business anymore since we'll be strangers. Although we were no longer a married couple, Lisa is still helping me. I have to be hospitalized, and I was thinking of leaving Kate with my parents, but I was wondering what to do about transferring her kindergarten when Lisa said, I'll take care of her.
I know Kate will be anxious without her mom, and changing environments will make her even more anxious.
My work is stable right now, Lisa said, so I decided to rely on her. About a month after I was hospitalized, I received a call on my smartphone. The name displayed was my ex-husband, Mike, and of course, I ignored the call. Despite ignoring it repeatedly, I kept getting calls from Mike. When I mentioned this to Lisa, who came to visit me, she said she also received calls and ignored them, but he apparently showed up at her in-laws' house. He apparently insisted on seeing me, but she sent him away, saying it was impossible since I was in the hospital.
Don't pay attention if he says anything. It's too late for him to realize your worth now.
Lisa's words made me feel stronger. After saying goodbye to Lisa, saying,
I am going home for today,
Mike appeared in my hospital room.
Why are you here?
I hadn't told Mike which hospital I was admitted to. He didn't even ask.
I went to my parents' house today. I saw my sister leaving with flowers, so I thought she might be visiting you.
Apparently, he followed Lisa. Mike's persistence was terrifying, and I was puzzled about what he wanted. Then, he clung to me. My illness has recurred. It turns out, Mike's leukemia had recurred. Although remission is possible with a bone marrow transplant, it does not guarantee there will be no recurrence.
So, can you be a donor again?
I was dumbfounded by his audacity. I was battling a severe illness, cancer, and the ex-husband who abandoned me came back as soon as he fell ill again. It was all too convenient.
I don't care. Isn't it your own fault?
What do you mean?
Didn't you have someone who supported you more devotedly than I did?
Upon hearing my words, Mike looked regretful. It seems that as soon as she found out about Mike's recurrence, his girlfriend immediately broke up with him. She apparently said she could handle work but not taking care of a sick person in her personal life.
You're the only one I can rely on now.
I firmly told Mike, who was begging for my help.
I absolutely don't want to. Are you going to abandon me when I am sick? You were the one who abandoned me first, right?
Mike was at a loss for words at my response.
Besides, I am currently consulting a lawyer about you.
A lawyer?
Yes, of course. Child support for Kate. I will make sure you pay.
But I am sick.
I am telling you, I am too.
As our fruitless argument continued, a doctor who noticed the commotion came into the room. The doctor restrained Mike, who was trying to grab me, and took him away. It seems that Mike was later handed over to the police. After being interrogated, a restraining order was issued against him. Hearing the commotion, Lisa came back to my room. After hearing the details, she seemed utterly disgusted by Mike's selfishness. I asked Lisa to testify, and after consulting with my lawyer, I decided to claim compensation from Mike and his mistress. Mike was very reluctant, but his mistress agreed to pay immediately, as if it were a severance payment. Since then, I have been slowly recovering. Lisa has been supporting me devotedly, and although Kate is still young, she has been cheering me on without being selfish. The cancer was successfully removed, and no metastasis has been found. On one hand, Mike still hasn't found a donor and is apparently living in fear every day. He managed to pay me the compensation by depleting his savings, but it seems that he won't be able to afford Kate's child support. Since he can't pay child support, he is not allowed to visit, so he is seemingly fighting his illness alone. I still have a good relationship with Lisa. After I was discharged from the hospital, I thought I couldn't bother her anymore, so I was considering moving out with Kate, but she got mad at me, saying I shouldn't think about unnecessary things after recovering from an illness. She told me to spend freely until I saved enough money, and I took advantage of her kindness and lived with her for a while with 3 of us. Since Kate is very attached to Lisa, we eventually decided to rent an apartment nearby even after saving enough money. We go back and forth between each other's houses, and now we have a relationship like best friends. I had a terrible breakup with Mike, and I was struck by an illness and had a hard time, but there are still people like Lisa who have supported me without changing. I may make Kate feel lonely, but I hope she grows up to be a strong, kind, and just woman like Lisa, and I want to continue to get along well in the future.
Don't you dare call the police. We are going to raise this child ourselves.
Huh? I was shocked by what Jack said, and felt uneasy because something seemed off about him. I pretended to agree with Jack's idea for the time being, but I was thinking about something else. And then, I took a certain action. My name is Lily Sullivan. I used to be a model, but now I am a full-time housewife. I am married and live with my husband, Jack. By the way, we do not have any children.
Thank you very much.
Jack waved goodbye to the moving company's worker. The building surrounding us was unmistakably an apartment complex. Jack gave me a big smile and said,
"From today, this apartment is our new home, Lily. The movers have brought our stuff, so let's start unpacking." "Yes, sure."
Jack went into the room we would be living in with great enthusiasm. Our apartment is on the first floor and has a small garden. Moreover, the interior of the apartments these days are nicely designed, and it feels pretty good. Also, the rent is cheap, and there are supermarkets, convenience stores, and parks nearby. By the way, one of my hobbies is walking. Walking allows me to feel the changing seasons, it's a form of exercise, and it helps me clear my mind. That's why I like walking. Besides, the park near the apartment is very spacious, making it an ideal environment for walking. To be honest, there's nothing to complain about.
I'm glad we moved here.
There is a reason why Jack and I moved to this apartment. We believe that we can't rely on pension in the future, so we decided to move here to save money for our old age. We also plan to live here when we get old, so we intentionally chose a first-floor apartment. Climbing stairs would be difficult when we get old, and I wanted to have an organic vegetable garden, so this first-floor apartment with a garden was very beneficial for us. However, the delay in our moving was due to my work. To make a long story short, I quit modeling in my 40s. I was still needed in the industry, but I thought there was no point in continuing as a model since I was already in my 40s, so I decided to quit. However, it took some time to quit, which delayed our move. For the record, I have been a model for fashion magazines since my teens and had a decent career. However, unlike recent models, I did not appear in dramas or variety shows, and even when my manager begged me, I refused. Somehow, I felt that it was wrong for a model to act like an actress or a celebrity. In other words, I had a strong desire to only do modeling work. Also, I was a former gang member during my school days, and I was worried that if I appeared on TV, my past would be exposed. I was highly valued by brands that specialized in innocent or conservative fashion, so if it was revealed that I was a former gang member, there was a risk that I would lose my job. In the entertainment industry, the image that the public has of you is very important. Therefore, I had developed a habit of hiding my past as a former gang member. Moreover, Jack does not know that I was a former gang member. He probably misunderstands and thinks of me as a pure and innocent woman. Of course, the success of making him misunderstand was due to my relentless effort. I always behaved and dressed like a lady, wore light makeup, and rarely went without makeup. All of this was to avoid disappointing Jack, and because I couldn't fulfill his wish, these actions were my way of making amends to him. To put it simply, I couldn't have children. Jack wanted a child with me, but I was worried that getting pregnant would create a gap in my work, and my body would no longer be usable as a model, so I did not have a child. Jack respected my decision, but the fact that I was making him endure it did not change. Honestly, it's a miracle he hasn't divorced me. I was reminiscing about the past and started to feel guilty towards Jack, so I took the trash that he was about to take out.
I'll take out the trash. You must be tired from moving, so take it easy. Wait.
I heard Jack calling after me, but I ran out energetically, reached the garbage disposal area, and threw away the trash. But near that garbage disposal area, a moving company's truck was parked.
Has someone moved in?
When I glanced at the moving truck, a beautiful woman got out of the seat. She seemed to be in her 20s. I was obviously staring at her, and our eyes met. And then she ran over to me.
Hi, I'm Kate Grubb. I just moved in today. Are you a neighbor? Yes. I live on the first floor over there. Well, I also just moved in today. Really? What a coincidence. I also live on the first floor, but in a different building.
She said that, pointed to her room, and smiled. Shortly after, Jack came running over to me.
Geez, you startled me by running out suddenly. Oh. Who is this? This is Kate Grubb. She just moved in today like us. I'm Kate Grubb. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you too. Oh, can I help you with your move? Really? Thank you.
So, Jack helped Kate with her move, along with the moving company staff. I decided to buy some convenience store sweets as a token of appreciation for Kate and Jack and headed to a nearby convenience store. Then, I unexpectedly ran into my classmate from my student days, Natalie, at the convenience store.
Is that you, Lily? Natalie! It's been a while.
It was the first time I'd seen Natalie since our coming-of-age ceremony. Both of us had gotten older, and our fashion had changed, but we still resembled our past selves. And when I looked closely, I saw that Natalie's basket was filled with whiskey, snacks, and gum syrup. Also, her makeup and fashion were quite flashy.
Natalie, what are you doing for work now? I run a bar. It's called Bar Natalie, nearby. Come and visit.
She said that and gave me a business card with the shop's name on it. Happy about the unexpected reunion with my classmate, I ended up buying a little too many convenience store sweets. After that, I had a housewarming celebration with Jack and Kate in Kate's room, eating convenience store sweets together. At that time, I thought everything was going well. A few weeks after moving, one day Jack said to me,
"Maybe you should put on heavier makeup?" "Why?" "Well, there's a karaoke place called Bar Natalie nearby, and the bartender there, Natalie, wears heavy but beautiful makeup. So, I thought maybe you should try heavier makeup too."
I was astonished that Jack suddenly commented on my makeup. I was quite annoyed by what Jack had said.
"Bars are dimly lit, so even if you wear heavy makeup, you still look beautiful. But I don't think it would look good in natural light." "Oh, is that so? Sorry, forget what I just said. You're beautiful as you are, so stay that way."
Saying that, Jack, perhaps feeling awkward, hurriedly went into his room. I was quite irritated by Jack's comment. The reason I wore light makeup was precisely because Jack liked women with a neat and tidy appearance. If I had worn heavy makeup like Natalie when we first met, Jack probably wouldn't have given me a second glance. Moreover, one of the reasons I wear light makeup is to prevent people from finding out that I was a former gang member. So, I am making meticulous efforts every day to not shatter Jack's dream, but not only does he not notice my efforts, he even suggested I should wear heavier makeup, which completely crushed my pride and, honestly, irritated me. The next day, I went to a certain place by taxi. That place was a monthly rental storage unit. In fact, this storage unit contains my high school album. I go to all this trouble to ensure that Jack doesn't find out about my past, specifically that I was a former gang member. But sometimes, I want to look at the album, so I go to the storage unit. However, the lock on the storage unit was broken, and the album that was inside was gone. It must have been stolen by someone. I was shocked and stood there frozen for a while. When I got home and told Natalie about it, she said something shocking. But since Natalie and I were friends and considering the situation at the time, I thought it wouldn't be a big deal, so I kept quiet about it. About a year later, I was awakened by the sound of a baby crying. It was late at night, and it was dark outside, but I could definitely hear a baby crying from behind the door. When I opened the door, there was a baby left abandoned. I immediately took the baby in and called Jack, who was on a business trip, to inform him about the baby. The next day, Jack came home.
"Look, there was even a note saying, 'Please take care of this child.'"
I showed Jack the baby and the note. Then Jack said something unbelievable.
"We must not call the police. We will raise this child." "What?"
I was flabbergasted by Jack's statement and felt an uneasy premonition because Jack was acting strangely. I pretended to agree with Jack's idea for the time being, but I was thinking about something else. Then I took action. The day after Jack came back, I gathered information about the baby while holding it in my arms to somehow calm the anxiety in my chest. I expected it would take some time to figure out who and where this baby came from, but things became clear surprisingly quickly. I was able to obtain reliable information about the baby, and my anxiety was halved. However, at the same time as I obtained the information, my body was covered with an immense feeling of anger. The next day, Jack, the baby, and I were at home. Jack was at home because he had the day off from work. I was holding the baby as usual. But suddenly, the baby started crying loudly, and while I was surprised, I tried to soothe it. While I was holding the baby and trying to soothe it with all my might, Jack kept staring at us. Honestly, it's quite uncomfortable to feel someone's gaze so intensely. Even when I showed a slightly displeased expression by lowering the corners of my mouth, Jack did not take his eyes off me and the baby. What kind of benefit is there in continuing to stare at us like that? Finally, I reached my limit of irritation with Jack, who continued to stare at us in silence, and I asked him, "Hey, why have you been staring at me and the baby for so long?" Then Jack smiled and said,
"Well, I was just thinking that we really look like a family."
"What?" I did not expect Jack to say something like that, so I inadvertently asked him again.
"I mean, we really look like a family, don't we? You have gotten used to holding the baby, and you've gotten better at soothing it. I think we've reached a level where it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say we're a family."
It's no good. When Jack talks about the family, it just irritates me listening to him. If you ask me, I am in no way related to this baby, and I don't want him to arbitrarily make us a family in his imagination. Besides, that day, when the baby was left at the front door, I was thinking of reporting it to the police, but Jack not only denied that thought, but also left me entirely in charge of taking care of the baby. So, if the baby starts crying, I am the one who has to act first. Because Jack doesn't feel like moving for the baby, using the excuse that he is tired from work. Excuses don't work when you're an adult. In fact, as an adult, you have to think creatively and take action. Jack is the one who initially wanted to raise the baby, so he should be actively participating in childcare. But he can't do that, and even today, he just keeps staring at me soothing the baby. And in the end, he even said, "It's like we're a family," and he is such a ridiculous person who rubs people the wrong way. I wish he would consider my feelings a little and act appropriately. Despite being in sales, why is Jack so bad at reading the situation? And while I was quietly getting irritated, Jack said this.
"You know, I really wanted a kid. So right now, I feel really fulfilled. Happiness might just be something like this."
I was quite pissed off at Jack's remark, and I couldn't hold back my anger any longer. "The only reason you feel happy is because I've been taking care of the baby for you. This man is just too stupid. Why have I been working so hard for this man, trying to keep our marriage going?" My heart was full of regret. Fearing that I would lash out at Jack, I said this.
"I just remembered something I need to do, so I'm gonna go. The baby seems to have stopped crying, so take care." "Eh? Wait, where are you going?"
I handed the baby to Jack and dashed outside. And then I headed for Kate's room. When I rang the doorbell, Kate came out.
"Oh. Isn't it Lily? What's the matter? I was just wondering how you've been lately. And I wanted to talk to you, Kate. I was thinking the same thing. It's a bit awkward to talk standing up, so please come in." "Thank you, Kate."
And so, I entered Kate's house. Honestly, it had been quite a while since I had seen or talked to Kate.
"It's been a while since we've met, hasn't it? Half a year?" "Yes, it has. I rang the doorbell a few times and you didn't answer, so I was wondering how you were doing." "I had actually gone back to my parents' house." "Oh, really? Why? Why do you ask?" "It's none of your business. I'll guess. You got pregnant, right?"
When I said that, Kate fell silent, as if I had hit the nail on the head.
"But you couldn't expect any support from your parents, so you reluctantly came home and then you went to my husband, the father of the child, for help, right? How do you know all that?" "Well, to put it simply, my husband, when he drinks, tends to spill the beans about everything at the drinking table. My friend, Natalie, happened to be at that drinking table and heard Jack talking about you. Apparently, Jack spilled everything about you that time. So Natalie told me everything. Don't underestimate the women's network. By the way, your stomach has gotten a lot smaller. Where did the baby go?" "Why do you ask such a mean question when you already know?" "You are the mean one, leaving your baby at my doorstep where I live with my children. It's not something a human should do. Thanks to you, I now have to raise your baby with Jack." Well, Jack leaves all the childcare to me and acts annoyingly paternal. It's a lie. Jack is not that kind of person. You are being deceived. Well, Jack has a good public face, and he helped you move, so it's no wonder you are mistaken. But the actual Jack is not a great person. Are you subtly bragging to me? Are you trying to say that you are happy to raise my baby as a substitute and that you are married to Jack? Of course not. I want to stop raising your baby. The reason I came here today is to ask why you left the baby at my doorstep. Hey, we're friends, right? Well, if you don't tell me, I'll report you to the police. What will you do?
When I said that, Kate glared at me and was silent for a while. But I stared back without losing, and Kate seemed to raise the white flag and started talking about the reason she abandoned the baby.
On the day Jack helped me move, we exchanged contact information. As we gradually communicated, I fell for Jack's personality, and before I knew it, we were in a relationship. Eventually, I became pregnant with Jack's baby, but he asked me to get an abortion. Moreover, he said he would not pay for the abortion. At that time, I was job hunting and had no savings. So, as a last resort, I went to my estranged parents' house and begged them for money, but it was no use. As time went by, I had no choice but to give birth to the baby. But I knew that just handing the baby over to an orphanage wouldn't relieve my resentment. Besides, I thought that if Jack saw the baby's face, he might change his mind and come to me. So, I left the baby at your doorstep. That's the whole story.
When Kate finished talking, she broke down in tears. But I showed no mercy to her.
So, basically, you're just an idiot who can't plan ahead. Honestly, I feel sorry for the baby being born into this mess. I can sort of understand why Jack doesn't want to remarry you. There's no happy future in marrying a clueless idiot. In that sense, Jack is smarter than you. But Jack is dumber than me. So, basically, you were just used by someone slightly smarter than an idiot. Really, it's a shame. From Jack's perspective, you're just a tool. A tool can't become a wife, you know. That's harsh. We won't know unless we ask Jack. I won't accept that he thinks of me as a tool. Oh, you really are stupid.
Just as Kate and I were having a heated exchange, the doorbell rang at the perfect time. When Kate opened the door, there was Jack holding a baby. I wondered what he wanted as I stared at Jack with cold eyes. But for some reason, Kate hugged Jack.
Jack! You came to pick me up with the baby. You must really love me, don't you? Huh? The one I love is Lily. I came here to pick up Lily. Don't get it twisted, you stupid woman.
Saying that, Jack pushed Kate away and headed towards me.
Lily, let's go home. It's pointless to deal with this woman. Indeed, Kate might be so incompetent as to leave a baby at someone's doorstep, but that action was prompted by feelings of wanting to get your attention, right? Well, there is no doubt that Kate is a hopeless thinker, but I also think that you are a hopeless person. Honestly, I don't even want to breathe the same air as you. So, in other words, I think you and Kate are a perfect match. The baby you are holding now has half of your and Kate's genes, right? So if you and Kate raise this baby, you can have a real family. It would be a huge loss to miss such a big opportunity, don't you think?
Hearing my words, Jack desperately spat out nasty words.
That's not it. I just lost my mind for a moment. I don't love Kate. The only one I love is Lily. Please believe me. Disgusting. There's no way I can believe that. You will never understand the humiliation and sadness I felt having to take care of the baby you and Kate created, even if it was just for a few days. And yet, you treat Kate like a tool, claim there's no love, but show affection towards the baby she gave birth to. You're the worst. What part of such a despicable man should I believe? Stop making a fool out of me.
After being berated by me, Jack, realizing he couldn't control me, vented his frustration with these words.
Shut up. You former gangster. I heard from Natalie that you were a delinquent in your school days, right? And what's with that light makeup? Trying to act like a pure, innocent model and deceive me, you're nothing but a scam artist. You tricked and made a fool out of me, didn't you? You're not one to talk.
Actually, Natalie accidentally mentioned my school days when Jack, unaware that he was my husband, came to the snack bar for karaoke. But since Jack was drinking at the time, Natalie and I thought he would be too drunk to remember. Apparently, Jack had a good memory. Really, what a troublesome man.
Yes, indeed, I hid from you that I used to be a gangster. But I had no choice. All the jobs that came my way were for being prim and proper, and back then, I wanted you to like me. It was a time when I had to pretend to be demure, so it couldn't be helped. Humph, you're just too lenient with yourself. Really, I'm so pitiable, being deceived by a woman like you.
The moment Jack said that, the intercom rang vigorously several times. I opened the door as if to say I wanted to see you quickly. And there stood Natalie.
I heard everything. You guys, the window was open so the conversation went straight outside. Well, it saved me the trouble of explaining, though.
I had already sent a request for help to Natalie by text before arriving at Kate's house. I thought she was a bit late, but it seemed that Natalie had been standing by in front of the door all along. How kind of Natalie.
Natalie! Thank you for coming. Who? This person? Natalie! You not only cheated and had a child, but you also stole Lily's album. You're the lowest scum. You should be grateful that a man of your level could date Lily. You idiot!
Natalie cut a satisfying rebuke, just like in her student days. It was a moment when my heart felt refreshed. However, Jack unexpectedly said this to Natalie and me.
Shut up! You gangsters! No matter how much you try to act like adults, in the end, both Lily and you are nothing but gangsters. Don't talk like you understand anything, you gangsters.
Natalie, quite pissed off by Jack's unexpected words, crushed an empty can on the table with one hand and said this to Jack.
I have a lot of juniors who are good at fighting. If I team up with them, I'm sure one day you'll be more miserably crushed than this empty can. If you don't want to make me angrier, apologize to Lily. Hey, and that woman you cheated with too.
Then, Kate and Jack, perhaps not wanting to suffer anymore, readily apologized to me. After that, it was decided that Jack and I would get divorced. I said this to Jack, who was looking down discontentedly.
Now that you're single again, why don't you remarry Kate and raise that baby together? You've always wanted your own child, haven't you? I don't want to. Who would want to live with such a stupid woman? I wanted to live with you, Lily, and I wanted to raise that baby with you.
Jack was just spewing out selfish words, like a child. And it seems that Jack had been suspicious of me going out somewhere from time to time and had been secretly following me. So, Jack found out that I was hiding an album in a warehouse and stole the album because he wanted to know what was inside. Really, what a guy. I felt like I would become useless if I stayed with someone like him, so I quickly gathered my things and left the apartment. When all was said and done, Jack wanted to be with someone as smart as me with a title like a model, and it seems like he only saw Kate as someone to hang out with. And, given Kate's financial situation, it was clear she couldn't afford to raise the baby, so the baby was placed in an orphanage. It's sad to think that, as always, the vulnerable and children are the ones caught up in the mess of adult affairs. As for me, I started living on my own after I finalized my divorce with Jack. But, as life goes on, living costs money. However, the only work experience I have is as a model, and there probably aren't many companies that'd want to hire someone my age. So after giving it a lot of thought, I decided to go back to modeling. But it wasn't like before, no magazine covers or fashion shows. Specifically, I was doing bridal modeling and catalog modeling. However, maybe because modeling is a small industry, the photographer who took my bridal photos turned out to be friends with a magazine editor I used to work with. Thanks to that photographer pulling some strings for me, I'm gonna start modeling for a magazine again next month. Lots will probably happen in the future, but I'm not gonna give up. I want to keep pushing forward.
High school dropouts shouldn't live in skyscrapers. Get out.
Looking down on me because I only completed middle school, this mom friend is trying to kick me out from my home. But should you say that?
We're the ones who are gonna leave. What?
I couldn't believe it. We just got married, and I never expected things to take such a turn. But you should own up to what you say, right? I'm Catherine, 39 years old. I live with my high school son, middle school daughter, and my husband who runs a business. I'm what you would call a CEO's wife. But even so, my husband and I faced many hardships when we were young. Because I dropped out from high school, my job opportunities were limited. I often faced comments like, "You didn't even finish high school" during interviews, and it was tough. My husband, who finished high school but not college, often struggled to fit in at work. He was frequently badmouthed behind his back, and it used to make him cry from frustration. Despite our tough challenges, we've achieved what we have today because of our hard work. That's why I volunteer to support those who are going through hard times. I mainly volunteer at welfare facilities and places related to children. And today, as usual, while I was volunteering, a person approached me. Curious, I turned towards the voice.
You clean up here around this time every day, right?
Said the woman. I don't volunteer for the praise. But realizing that someone noticed my efforts made me incredibly happy.
Yes.
I replied with a smile.
Seeing your elegant presence every morning lifts my spirits. Please keep up the good work.
And then she left. From that day, I started chatting with this woman, Sarah. Sarah is a single mother. She works hard every day to raise her elementary school-aged daughter.
My ex-husband cheated on me when our daughter was only 6 months old.
And he is refusing to pay child support. What a terrible ex-husband.
I have kids too. I think I can offer some advice as a more experienced mom, so please feel free to reach out to me if you'd like.
I just blurted that out.
You're so kind. Thank you.
We exchanged contact information and became friends. One day, I invited Sarah over to my place. She brought her daughter along, and my middle school daughter played with her.
I always thought you had an air of elegance about you, but I never expected you to live in a penthouse.
Sarah looked completely surprised.
I knew it, but the world you live in is so different from mine. Catherine, you're not only wealthy, but also a beautiful-hearted woman who volunteers.
Sarah seemed a bit down after saying this, so I shared my past struggles with her. Hearing this, Sarah looked genuinely surprised.
Now I suddenly feel much closer to you.
Hearing Sarah's cheerful response, I felt relieved.
Plus, I dropped out of high school, and my husband just graduated from high school. We've had our share of challenges.
When I mentioned that, Sarah was truly astonished.
Why did you drop out of high school?
I answered Sarah's question.
My father passed away early. We were quite poor. But I had a younger sister and brother, so I started working at local stores like the grocery and liquor stores instead of continuing high school.
As I shared my past, Sarah looked astounded.
Even I graduated from college. I always thought high school and college were a given. I can't believe Catherine, the wife of a CEO, didn't even finish high school. And that her husband only has a high school degree.
Sarah just couldn't wrap her head around it.
We're also a single-parent household. I have to make sure my child doesn't end up like Catherine.
I understood what she meant. However, I thought she shouldn't have said that in front of me. I tried to change the topic by talking about our children. The conversation eventually shifted, and before we knew it, it was evening.
I've been so mentally drained with work, parenting, and chores. This was a refreshing break.
Sarah and her daughter left. Despite the awkward moment, I genuinely want to maintain my relationship with Sarah. As I was tidying up, my son and husband came back home. Ah, another day comes to an end, I thought, savoring the mundane routine, when suddenly, hey, have you seen my pencil? And I can't find my new notebook either. My eldest son started making a fuss about his missing stationery.
Make sure you take care of your things.
While I was busy preparing dinner, I didn't really pay much attention to my son's story about losing something. Now, I deeply regret not listening more carefully to my son's missing stuff story back then. One day, while I was volunteering as usual, I bumped into Sarah, who seemed to be on her way to work, and we exchanged greetings. Then Sarah said, "Could you make some time for me soon? I have something important to discuss with you." Of course, I replied and waved her off. But I couldn't help but wonder, what's this important thing she wants to discuss? I kept thinking about Sarah throughout my volunteer work that day. Then on Sarah's day off,
"Come on, let's study over here."
my daughter beckoned Sarah's little girl into her room.
She really feels like a little sister to her.
Sarah smiles as she watches the girls.
I wonder if she's ready to become a big sister.
Although Sarah's eyebrows are slightly furrowed, her overall expression is bright. What did she mean by becoming a big sister? Curious, I asked Sarah. Eagerly, as if she'd been waiting for the question, Sarah began.
The thing is, I'm getting remarried. Really?
I was taken aback. I'd known she had a boyfriend, but this was unexpected. So, becoming a big sister probably meant they might be expecting a child. What a joyous news.
I'm so happy for you. Congratulations.
I congratulated Sarah.
Thank you. And I'd love for you to come to the wedding.
She's inviting me to her wedding. That's such a sweet offer.
I'd be thrilled if your husband could attend as well.
By this time, our families had become close, so Sarah probably invited my husband too.
I'll talk to him as soon as he gets home.
That day, we were all excited talking about Sarah's upcoming wedding and her baby on the way. Then Sarah made a surprising remark.
You know, my fiancé is quite well off. And guess where we're moving? Right into this skyscraper here.
This area is a bit on the rural side. It's the only skyscraper around here.
So, I'll get to see you all the time now, Sarah.
Imagine that, having a friend living in the same building. How could I not be thrilled?
Yes, that's right.
But, Sarah's expression remained the same. I'm sorry, I'm feeling a bit nauseous from the morning sickness. May I use your restroom? With that, she headed to the bathroom.
I've had 2 kids, so I know how rough morning sickness can be. Probably that is why she couldn't show her excitement earlier. Must be those hormones acting up.
I made myself to believe that Sarah's earlier lack of enthusiasm was because of pregnancy-related discomfort. There'd be no other reason for Sarah not to be joyful. I was confident with the trust Sarah had in me. But she's been in the restroom for quite a while now.
I hope she's okay.
Feeling concerned, I started to head towards the restroom.
Oh, I'm sorry for taking so long.
As I reached for the living room doorknob, Sarah came back.
Are you all right?
I approached Sarah, noticing she looked a bit pale.
I'm sorry for worrying you. I think I'll head home now.
She must have been feeling quite ill.
Thanks for sharing the wedding news, even though you're not feeling well.
I said my goodbyes as I saw her off.
I hope Sarah finds the happiness she deserves.
I genuinely wished this from the bottom of my heart. That evening, when my husband and son got home, we discussed Sarah's upcoming wedding, and both of them conveyed their blessings. It was decided, all 4 of us would attend. On the wedding day.
Mom! Can't find my favorite handkerchief. Have you seen it?
Lately, my son has been making a fuss about missing items. Having recently finished stressful college entrance exams and starting college, he's probably let his guard down.
It's 'cause you're so messy that you tend to lose things.
I remarked with a hint of exasperation, to which my son made a displeased face. Trying to soothe my son, our family hopped into the car and headed to the wedding venue. But the traffic was terrible, and it seemed we were gonna be late. Even though we left an hour early.
Looks like there was a pileup.
my husband murmured. I quickly called the wedding venue to notify them about our delay. We arrived way later than planned we expected.
I can't believe we're so late. I feel terrible for Sarah.
We all adore Sarah, so with a heavy heart, we proceeded to the venue. The staff informed us, the ceremony will be over in about 10 minutes. It's best you wait outside. Well, there's nothing we can do now. There's gonna be a reception afterwards, right? We'll offer our apologies there. So, we decided to wait for the ceremony to end. Soon enough, guests started pouring out.
Huh? Isn't that my sales director? And there's the sales manager. Why do I recognize so many faces?
Turned out, a lot of attendees were from my husband's company. What on earth is going on? My family and I were puzzled by my husband's comments.
Boss, is that you? Good to see you. I had no idea you'd be here.
Upon noticing my husband, several coworkers rushed over to greet him. As he was responding, my phone buzzed. It was a call from Sarah. I immediately answered, ready to apologize.
I'm so sorry, Sarah.
Before I could say more, Sarah, with a kind tone, said, "It's okay." She continued.
I'd like to see you, so I'm coming over to where you are. I've just finished changing my dress.
She mentioned that she'd be coming over to us. However, my husband was busy talking to his colleagues, and our kids said they were gonna explore the venue for a bit, looking for Instagrammable spots. So, no one was around me.
It's a shame, especially since Sarah is making the effort to come over.
Just as I was pondering, a voice called out, "Sorry for the wait." Sarah arrived, looking stunning in a bright red chiffon dress. I was about to compliment her when she said, chuckling,
"Now I'm the winner. Not like you. Dropouts shouldn't live in luxury apartments. Get out." Excuse me?
What on earth is she talking about? I couldn't grasp what she meant right away.
I can't stand the idea of someone like you, a dropout, living in the same apartment complex as me. Leave now.
Sarah suddenly snapped. Come to think of it, when I mentioned before that I didn't finish high school, Sarah had shown her disgust. But I never expected such a strong reaction. Still, I pointed out, is this really the place for this kind of confrontation?
What? Why not? She laughed sarcastically. It's my day. I can be upset wherever I want.
I was taken aback by the sudden revelation, but I never realized Sarah was so self-centered.
You know, I've always thought it's funny how you, a dropout, do volunteer work. So hypocritical. Who would want someone like you, a dropout, to help them out?
Anyone can volunteer, but I can't understand why it's not okay to be a high school dropout.
Anyone can volunteer. Education doesn't matter.
I coldly said to Sarah.
Big deal. Some high school grad buys a skyscraper apartment, yet his wife is a high school dropout. Weird, right? The nearby 5-story apartment seems more fitting for you guys. You should move out soon. Your presence is lowering the value of that fancy apartment.
Sarah's loud, mocking laughter drew the attention of the guests attending the wedding, including my husband and kids.
Why did you even invite us to your wedding if you were gonna insult us this much?
I confronted Sarah with the question that had been bothering me since she started hurling insults.
I invited you here to show everyone how dumb you and your husband are, just a high school grad and his wife. Everyone attending today's wedding has a college degree. They all look down on you too.
I was taken aback that Sarah had planned this entire humiliation. All we wanted was for our sincere congratulations to be acknowledged.
Being late to a wedding? Typical for the out-of-touch low-education couple. No matter how rich you are, you shouldn't do such things. Leave your gift and go start preparing for your move.
I regretted being late. But Sarah's behavior was beyond unacceptable.
Get out. And not just from this wedding hall, but from that skyscraper too.
Sarah's shrill voice echoed throughout the hall. Suddenly, a man in a tuxedo appeared, stating, "We'll be the ones leaving."
What are you talking about?
The previously excited Sarah was now calm.
That's my company's CEO you're insulting. What's your problem? CEO!
Apparently, many of the wedding attendees were employees from my husband's company because the groom was one of his employees.
You work at the high school grad CEO's company?
A shocked Sarah received a nod from the groom.
No way! I can't believe it!
Sarah was trembling. Come to think of it, Sarah knew my husband was a CEO but didn't know which company he led.
Why? Why didn't you tell me anything? If I'd known from the beginning. If I had known.
Now she was getting defensive.
Enough's enough. Apologize now and let's get out of here.
The groom tried to calm and upset Sarah.
I can't believe this. If I had known, I would have kept buttering them up. Darn it. My plan's ruined.
Sarah threw a tantrum. Because the bride was in such a state, there was a buzz among the attendees. Suddenly, there was a sharp snap, and a dull sound echoed throughout the already resonant hallway of the wedding venue. The groom had slapped Sarah on the cheek. Sarah, caught off guard, couldn't utter a word.
Hey! You disrespect the boss's family and then throw a fit like this? Get a grip.
The groom was furious.
Yeah, that's right. Even if you're the bride, you can't insult the boss and his family. Yeah, he's right.
The husband's co-workers unanimously scolded Sarah.
Why? What did I do? What's wrong with mocking a dropout? All of you are just as dumb as this stupid family.
Sarah spat out these words and stormed off.
Hey! Wait up!
The groom chased after Sarah. I followed closely behind. But soon, the groom lost sight of her and looked around frantically. I'm truly sorry. The groom, out of breath, bowed his head in apology.
You've done nothing wrong.
Together with my husband, we tried to calm the groom down. We continued our search for Sarah. In her bright red dress and being pregnant, she couldn't have gone far. We were certain we'd find her. As we searched, we heard a groaning sound coming from a restroom.
Sarah?
I called out, and the noise stopped.
What? Just a high school dropout, after all.
It seemed Sarah hadn't learned her lesson. But there's no point in getting more upset now.
Listen, I truly believe that education is essential. Both my husband and I struggled because of our educational backgrounds. But if you don't have the education, you just need to work harder.
When I said that, Sarah came out of the bathroom.
Work hard? If you don't have an education, you're gonna work hard? So, you're saying that everything will turn out fine in life?
Sarah had makeup streaks running down her cheeks.
Yes. In many ways, that was the case for my husband and I. And another thing, the willingness to help each other. That's crucial too. When you're in trouble, don't hesitate to talk to someone.
When I gently said that, Sarah bit her lip and looked down.
I mean, yes, I looked down on you for only completing a middle school education, but the real reason I wanted you to leave that luxury apartment was something else. Huh?
Tears filling her eyes, Sarah began to speak haltingly.
Actually, from your home, I've been stealing various things.
Shockingly, Sarah had been taking things from our house. Things like pencils and toilet paper, even small items like handkerchiefs. Every time she visited, she'd steal something. Apparently, she always had a knack for theft, and it seemed her real reason for divorce was also related to her stealing habits.
At first, I approached you, Catherine, because I thought you were an elegant and lovely woman. But when I found out about your education, I got jealous. I thought she's richer than me, so it's okay to steal just a bit.
Had my words hit her nerve? Even without being asked, Sarah revealed her true feelings.
Even though I was stealing, you and your husband were kind to me. I was filled with guilt. That's why I truly didn't want you to find out. When I decided to live in that luxury apartment, I wished you lived further away. So that's why.
Stealing is inexcusable, as is lying and then hurling insults. I really had no intention of forgiving Sarah.
But I've been through hard times myself. I've been doing volunteer work for years, wanting to help others. So, I can tell when someone's really struggling. Sarah, you're struggling right now, aren't you? If you could stop your thieving habits, you would, right?
I leaned in and asked Sarah, and she burst into tears. Despite everything she had done, as someone who does volunteer work, I couldn't abandon Sarah. I might seem foolish, but merely blaming someone won't help anyone.
Shut.
Suddenly, Sarah muttered something.
Huh?
When I asked her to repeat, she yelled.
I said shut up. That's why you seem so hypocritical.
Just when I thought Sarah had knocked me down, a sharp pain shot through my face.
I'm so freaking mad. Normally, when someone realizes their stuff's been stolen, they get mad, right? But what's with you? You're so damn creepy.
Sarah cried out in tears. Sarah's tears dropped onto my face.
This is all messed up because of you. My wedding, my life. If I'd never met someone like you. If I hadn't met a dropout like you.
Sarah continued her rage without trying to stop herself.
Stop it.
Finally, I managed to grab both of Sarah's wrists and stop her.
Enough. Always blaming others like that. I get it, being pregnant can mess up your hormone balance and make you easily upset or teary-eyed. But this is way over the top.
I've finally lost my patience.
That's why things come back to bite you, because you hurt others without a second thought. Don't you get it yet? But...
Sarah seemed like she wanted to say something but couldn't find the... Suddenly, security personnel entered the room. It seems they had already heard about Sarah's outburst. She was quickly escorted out. And to my surprise, the police were waiting for Sarah. Sarah was arrested.
I didn't think Sarah would be like this. Let's divorce.
Just as Sarah was about to be taken away in the police car, the groom, now her ex-husband, said that to her.
Damn it. This is the worst. You've got to be kidding me.
Rejected by her groom, Sarah's desolate scream echoed. A few days later, it seemed Sarah's detention was suspended due to her pregnancy. By the way, their daughter is now staying with Sarah's parents. Sometimes the daughter comes to visit and chats about various things.
I don't even think of her as my mom.
Despite being just a child, she seems to have a strong aversion to Sarah. Even Sarah seems to be deeply affected, reportedly sinking into severe depression. Moreover, Sarah's parents are also so disappointed in her that they are considering cutting ties. Sarah is on the brink of being abandoned by her own family.
I wish I could be as strong as Catherine.
After giving birth and getting bailed out, Sarah was determined to get proper counseling. However, it's hard to trust someone who lies so effortlessly. As for me,
I'm sorry. I really am.
I'm deeply apologizing to my son. That incident when he was so upset that he had lost something. I had no idea that Sarah had stolen it and felt remorseful for brushing it off.
I told you, I didn't just lose it. Good thing it came back though.
My son, still holding a grudge.
Who'd have thought Sarah was like that?
My daughter was taken aback as she was close with Sarah's daughter.
A high school graduate CEO. Ha! I've got a long way to go.
My husband, trying to see the bright side for some reason. Our family of 4 will likely face challenges again. But we want to come together and overcome them.
I brought something for you. Here it is.
I watched closely as Jason handed a cake box to my mother. Jason's forced smile made me feel a bit uneasy. I quietly took the cake box from him. After slightly opening the box and confirming its contents, I threw it into the trash.
Hey! What do you think you're doing?
Jason and my mother simultaneously looked at me and expressed their anger at what had happened in front of them.
What I did?
I asked my mother, amazed.
Did you see what was inside the cake?
My mother began to tremble at the unexpected question, as if she didn't think it was possible. I glared at Jason to confirm if my suspicions were correct. Jason looked frustrated and upset. Just as I thought. I clenched my fist, ready to get back at Jason for what he had done. My name's Jessica Smith. I'm 36 and I work as a caregiver. Work is busy every day, and by the time I get home at night after leaving early in the morning, I'm completely worn out. I knew the job would be physically demanding, but since getting married to Jason a year ago, we hardly see each other. Jason, on his end, works as a long-haul truck driver with irregular hours, adding to our difficulties in finding quality time together. Anyhow, we know we need to address our marital issues soon, but with both of us buried in our jobs, it's been hard to communicate. Our initial meeting was through a mutual friend. I've always been shy when it comes to love. After becoming a caregiver, I often declined invitations to social events after work. I wasn't the type to actively seek out a relationship, and after a long day at work, I just couldn't muster the energy to go out. Most of my peers were desperately looking for partners as they approached the marriageable age. Even if they were tired from work, they'd make the effort to find a romantic partner. While watching my friends passionately tackle their challenges, I, who had been nonchalantly avoiding relationships, suddenly started feeling the pressure after turning 30. Especially as everyone around me began getting married or having children. I can't go on like this. Even if I'm shy when it comes to love, I had always wanted to marry someday. So, I reached out to a friend who once invited me to a singles party, and she introduced me to a man of my age. That was my husband, Jason. Jason was 2 years older than me. He was always calm and composed, so I could sense the maturity that came with his age. What I needed wasn't a fiery romance, but a stable, quiet marital life. I liked him right away. Our interests aligned, and things moved quickly. We started dating and tied the knot a year ago. We began our marital life living with my mother. Without a father, I felt bad about leaving my mother alone after getting married. I thought Jason might object to living with my mother, but he was surprisingly okay with it. Though it took some time, I was able to get married and now live together with my mother. Everything seemed to fall into place and I was at ease, but from there, unexpected developments awaited. Something I couldn't have predicted just after our marriage. Right after Jason and I got married, there was an incident at my workplace. Several employees quit in succession. The reasons people gave for quitting varied widely. Some left to get married, while others wanted a change in career. While they probably didn't consult each other and quit all at once, the end result was that those left behind had to take on twice the amount of work as before. So, I started coming home later than ever before, and our lives became even more out of sync. So, when I left work on time for the first time in a while and sat down at the dinner table with Jason and my mother, I noticed the atmosphere in the house was incredibly tense.
Hey, did you take care of that thing we talked about the other day? What thing? You forgot? I told you to open an account at M-Bank. Right. I forgot, my apologies. How could you? I told you countless times. It's really thoughtless of you to forget.
My mother looked amazed at Jason, sighing heavily. There seemed to be some exchange between them that I wasn't aware of, but Jason had forgotten something my mother had asked him to do.
What do you mean by bank? Well, you know, Jessica, you have an account with M-Bank, right? We never know what the future holds, and I think it would be wise for Jason to have one too, but he just won't listen. I'm really sorry, I truly just forgot. Oh, really? Well, if that's the case, it's fine.
Indeed, I have an account with M-Bank. My mother deposits a small amount into that account every month, thinking of the unforeseen future. Probably, she plans to save for Jason as well. But Jason doesn't seem to get that she's trying to save for him, he just hears it as a demand to open an account. My mother has a bit of a bad habit. She speaks in a curt way, which can come off as cold. Because Jason doesn't get her real intentions, their conversations often miss the mark. That being said, I myself haven't been able to talk properly with my mother lately, so I've often had fights with her.
Come on, Jason is busy too. No need to be so hard on him. You always say things so carelessly, not understanding the gravity of what I'm trying to convey.
Not only is her tone sharp, but my mother also gets emotional quickly. So at that time too, it seemed that she was angry because her daughter didn't appreciate her kindness. That night in our bedroom, Jason said to me,
"Your mom always seems to be nagging me. She gives me these confusing commands. Every day, until you get home, she's like a broken record telling me to get insurance, invest my money, and all that jazz. I'm exhausted from work and I just can't deal with her anymore." My mom had a time in the past when she didn't have money, and she's just worried. Instead of saying that, please just listen to her a bit.
Knowing my mother's concerns, I tried to pacify the complaining Jason. On the surface, Jason seems to get along with my mother, but deep down he seemed to resent her. I get where he's coming from. I understand how annoying it can be to have someone go on and on about something you're not interested in, and even more so, how tiring it is to be constantly told what to do. But my mother just wants to ensure that Jason and I won't face financial hardships in the future.
I can't stand it anymore. I'll deal with insurance and investments when I feel like it. As for the bank account, it's obvious she'll only use it for her deposits or investments. Nowadays, you can't have multiple accounts at the same bank. Bank is the closest to our house and she just wants an account, it's as clear as day.
Normally calm, Jason becomes very emotional about my mother. Being able to empathize with both my mother's feelings and Jason's frustrations, I simply nodded to Jason's story, letting out a sigh, wondering if there wasn't some way to resolve things.
It might be better if we lived separately. That way, we wouldn't have to deal with her constant nagging. Hey!
Jason knows I don't want to leave my mother alone. Making such a spiteful remark seemed rather mean-spirited to me.
I'm just kidding. I'm gonna do whatever she asks. Whether it's an account or whatever, I should just set it up for her, right?
He finally commented in a resigned tone, lying down on the bed in a huff. I didn't have any more to add, feeling uneasy. I just closed my eyes and lay down like Jason. So, after living together, it had been almost a year since the three of us had started living together and our feelings had remained at odds with each other. I feared that our days of discomfort would just continue, but an unexpected incident occurred.
Cancer!
Yes,
it's really frustrating to find out about this at my age.
One day, when I returned home a bit earlier than usual, my mother nonchalantly told me she'd been diagnosed with cancer. Jason hadn't returned yet, and it seemed like a good time for her to break the news.
Oh no! Is it serious? How advanced is it? It doesn't seem too serious yet, but I'm gonna have surgery soon and will probably be hospitalized for a bit. Can you handle the housework?
My mother, more concerned about whether I can do the housework than her own surgery, leaves me wondering if she's being kind or just interfering. Either way, her concern over something so trivial irritated me, somehow.
Of course I can manage. How old do you think I am? What's with you? I'm really worried about you. You're crabby. I get it without you saying it every time. I can handle the housework, you just focus on getting better.
I don't even know why I'm getting so worked up, but the fact that my mother has cancer seems to have hit me harder than I thought. I just can't be honest with my feeling, and I found myself frustrated again at not being able to offer my mother any comforting words.
All right, I get it. Jason would listen without any fuss.
My mother doesn't know what Jason really thinks about her behind her back. So, seeing Jason nod on the surface in agreement to her requests, which almost sound like orders, she probably believes that Jason is on her side. While she scolds Jason in a stern tone at times, she doesn't seem to be genuinely mad at him. In reality, Jason always begrudgingly listens to my mother, and he's never seriously paid attention to what she says. I want to tell that to her, but given my current standing, I can't say anything to my mother. Even though I'm truly on my mother's side, not Jason, all I could do was murmur it in my heart. Afterwards, my mother informed Jason that she has cancer and needs surgery. I don't know how Jason reacted, but seeing the peaceful look on my mother's face before she slept, I could tell she was comforted just the right amount. However, as expected, Jason seemed deeply disturbed upon hearing about my mother's illness.
How bad is your mother's illness?
I'm not sure.
All she told me was that it wasn't that bad. Is that so?
Jason didn't seem convinced at all and showed a cryptic reaction. With my heart in turmoil, I tried to calm down as I headed to bed. That was the end of our conversation for the day, and Jason and I went to sleep amidst the chilling silence. From that day, even more so than before, I continued living a life without crossing paths with Jason at all. It seems that my mother and Jason rarely see each other. In that case, when on earth does Jason come home? I usually go to bed before Jason returned and start my day either before he wakes up or after he has left. This is exactly what it feels like to live separately within the same house. I was starting to suspect Jason, having no idea what he was thinking. While I continued living a life without crossing paths with Jason, the day of my mother's surgery finally arrived.
I wonder if Jason will come.
My mother sighed in her hospital room before entering the operating room.
Even though Jason won't come, I'm here.
Jason. There's no need to prioritize a son-in-law over one's own daughter, especially at a time like this. Having such bitter thoughts, I wonder if I'm a narrow-minded daughter. I kept my surprise hidden and simply cheered my mother on as she headed to the operating room.
You got this.
The surgery ended roughly 6 hours later. During that time, Jason never showed up. Of course, I had informed him, and he should have known today was the day of my mother's surgery. I just had to assume he was busy with work. The surgery was successful, and the cancer cells in my mother were temporarily removed. She would need to stay hospitalized for a while, but I sincerely hoped she would fully recover. When my mother woke up from the anesthesia, she seemed distracted ever since she was briefed by the doctor. Of course, she was happy about the successful surgery, but she couldn't help but wonder when Jason would come to visit.
Don't worry so much. He'll come eventually.
Maybe Jason's fed up with me. Oh dear. My mother, who's emotionally volatile, upon realizing that Jason's taking forever to show up, can't help but doubt that she might be disliked. While her suspicions aren't entirely wrong, she still believes that Jason is on her side, so she probably feels betrayed. While comforting my agitated mother, I listened to her complaints throughout her hospital stay with a heavy heart. A week after the surgery, Jason finally came to visit. It just so happened that I was visiting after work, and I could see my mother's face light up when Jason arrived.
Hey, how are you feeling? I thought you'd never come, Jason.
My mother's tone made it sound like she had been waiting for a lover, which embarrassed me.
I brought something for you. Here it is.
I watched closely as Jason handed a cake box to my mother. Jason's forced smile made me feel a bit uneasy. I quietly took the cake box from him. After slightly opening the box and confirming its contents, I threw it into the trash.
Hey! What do you think you're doing?
Jason and my mother simultaneously looked at me and expressed their anger at what had happened in front of them.
What I did?
I asked my mother, amazed.
Did you see what was inside the cake?
My mother began to tremble at the unexpected question, as if she didn't think it was possible. I glared at Jason to confirm if my suspicions were correct. Jason looked frustrated and upset. Just as I thought. I clenched my fist, ready to get back at Jason for what he had done.
What the hell, Jessica? Throwing away the gift I specifically bought.
Jason immediately adopted an aggressive stance, as if to argue that what he'd done was right.
What do you mean? You should know better than anyone else, shouldn't you?
I wasn't about to let Jason have the last word. For a long time, Jason and I had been living past each other, and confronting him directly like this was somewhat intimidating. But I couldn't let my mother suffer because of Jason's malice. That was the one thing I absolutely needed to prevent.
What are you talking about? Hey, try the cake. It's delicious.
Jason retrieved the cake box from the trash and pulled out the contents. It looked like a standard cream cake. But I recognized instantly. The cake wasn't from a bakery. As evidence, the cream was unevenly spread, and the strawberries on top looked somewhat pale and damaged. Yet, my mother didn't seem to notice such details, and she gazed at the cake, asking, "Huh?
Hold on, let me try it first."
I swiftly grabbed the cake from between Jason and my mother, who were close to each other, and took a bite from the edge. I really didn't want to, but there was no other choice. This was the only way to prove Jason's wrongdoing. After taking a bite at the cake, I immediately sensed something was off. First, it was incredibly salty. So salty and bad that I felt like throwing up. There was also an overpowering smell of alcohol, far more than what would normally be in such a dessert. I spit the cake into a tissue that was in the hospital room. Seeing my reaction, I could tell my mother's expression stiffened.
This is unbelievable. What's with this taste? Loads of salt and alcohol. Aren't these the very things a cancer patient shouldn't consume?
Even for healthy individuals, consuming too much salt and alcohol is toxic. For cancer patients, it further increases the risk of the disease. The idea that he intentionally wanted to feed this to my mother was horrifying. As Jason didn't anticipate I'd taste the cake, I could see him go pale.
You knew Mom's cancer treatment caused taste disturbances. So, you brought this. What's your aim?
It's not uncommon for cancer patients to have taste disturbances from treatments. I remember my mother telling me recently, I can't taste the food. Given her surgery, it should improve. But if Jason was aware of my mother's taste issues, it's not surprising he thought of the alcoholic cake. My mother looked at Jason with sheer terror. She seemed to have finally realized that he wasn't on her side. And as for Jason, he finally abandoned the facade of goodwill, lifted the corner of his eye and spoke with a defiant expression.
The goal? It's obvious. To hasten this old hag's disease and cash in on the insurance money.
Jason let out a loud, almost hysterical laugh. He's insane. He bragged about doing it for the insurance money, and tried to harm my mother. To know he had such intentions and would brazenly admit to them was horrifying. A chill ran down my spine.
Huh? Do you even realize what you were trying to do? That's a crime, you know. I know, and I don't care if I become a criminal. I just want to get rid of this old hag as soon as possible.
It's clear that when Jason scornfully referred to my mother as an old hag and tried to make her eat the poisoned cake, the image of Jason inside my mother's mind completely crumbled. That's how much my mother had a look of despair on her face.
You're always nagging me, telling me to do this and that, and you get mad when I don't obey. My life isn't just for you, old hag. Don't order me around. It makes me sick.
Jason vents the pent-up frustrations he's felt up until now at my mother. My mother looked at Jason with shocked eyes.
I just didn't want you to struggle with money, Jason. I don't care about that. I decide for myself. Don't interfere in my life every single time. Damn it, you ruined my plan. What are you gonna do, Jessica?
Jason glared at me while stamping his foot angrily. I held my head up high, trying not to be cowed by his snake-like eyes. In the corner of my vision, I could see my mother's frail body, crushed by despair. Wait for me, Mom. I'll drive this guy away.
Sorry to break it to you, but instead of getting insurance money, you're the one who's gonna have to pay alimony. Huh? What the hell are you talking about?
Jason laughed scornfully. He still hasn't realized. There's no way I'd confront you like this without any ammunition. I took out a large envelope from my bag and scattered its contents at Jason's feet. Seeing the contents of the envelope, the color drained from Jason's face in an instant. Looks like he recognized them. That makes things easier.
These were investigated by a private investigator. I suspected you might be cheating. To my surprise, so much evidence came out so quickly. How's it going with your mistress?
What I had laid out in front of Jason were numerous evidences of his affair brought by the investigator. Most of the photos are of him with his mistress. I didn't really want to look directly at the photos, but seeing Jason in them, leering and intertwining his arm with that woman's, fueled my determination.
How's it going? What the hell are you talking about? This is so unfair.
Realizing he could no longer make excuses with such evidence presented to him, Jason didn't try to dodge the blame. Instead, he lashed out, trying to paint me as the villain. But to me, it just sounded like the whining of a loser. No matter how much Jason shouted, I wasn't scared at all.
Unfair? Who's being unfair? Sneaking around cheating on me while pretending to be busy, and then trying to do something terrible to my mom? Unbelievable. I thought you were busy with work, but you were actually busy cheating, weren't you? I feel so stupid for feeling down because we were living separate lives.
Reflecting on my life up until now, tears naturally welled up in my eyes. I got married later than everyone else around me, but I was so happy when I married Jason. It saddened me that Jason would speak ill of my mother and that we could no longer hold a conversation together. My pent-up sadness and frustration that I couldn't vent to anyone suddenly exploded. Yet, even seeing me like that, Jason just sneered at me.
I don't care about that. I was planning to live happily with Emma after getting a ton of insurance money. But you ruined it, you damn woman.
Ignoring my feelings entirely, Jason continued to spew insults. Emma must be the name of his mistress. Doing my best to suppress my trembling body, I tried to retort to Jason. But before I could, my mother spoke up.
I've been listening, and Jason, you're unbelievable. Not only for what you tried to do to me, but how can you speak to Jessica like that? It's because of you and your daughter that I've never been happy in my married life. It's your fault.
Jason wasn't the calm and cool guy I once thought he was anymore. Distorted with ugliness, his desire to get away from me and my mother was painfully clear. My mother seemed to have finally lost her patience with Jason's incessant ranting.
Excuse me? Our fault? Do you have any idea how much we've considered you in our lives? I've been saving money for you every month. Jessica, even when she was super busy, has been juggling work and housework. And yet you trample on our efforts like this? It's unbelievable.
I could see the fire in my mother's eyes. Startled by her intensity, Jason took a step back.
Shut up! I never asked for any of that.
Jason tried to fight back against my mother, but it seemed to have no effect on her.
Shut up! Apologize to Jessica. And never come back home. Jessica can be happy without a jerk like you.
Hearing my mother shout, Jason finally fled the scene. The evidence of his infidelity remained scattered on the floor. I looked at my mother's face. Breathing heavily, my mother embodied the very image of a noble mother protecting her precious daughter.
Mom, thank you. That guy's unbelievable. Jessica, find a better man. You deserve more happiness.
I had thought my mother didn't care about me at all. But she stood up for me. She truly cared for me. Realizing that alone brought tears to my eyes, and I sobbed uncontrollably in her chest. She gently stroked my back. After that, on my way back from the hospital, I stopped by a lawyer's office and decided to proceed with the divorce process. When I got home, I immediately contacted Jason to let him know that I would be proceeding with the divorce process through a lawyer. Jason seemed to have talked to my lawyer. And just like that, our divorce was finalized smoothly. After that, Jason moved out. He's probably living with that so-called Emma. But I doubt they'll ever find true happiness. Through my lawyer, I intend to seek damages from Jason for trying to feed my mother a poisoned cake. Knowing Jason, who was hoping to rely on my mother's life insurance, he's probably tight on money now. Well, it's no longer my problem. Of course, I haven't given Jason the money that my mother had saved up for him. If nothing had happened, he wouldn't have had to worry about money. I hope he struggles. As for me, after my mother was discharged from the hospital, we started our life together. I moved to a workplace with shorter working hours so I could spend more time with my mother. I plan to enjoy life just with my mother for a while. I haven't yet given back to her. But now, I'm able to talk much more openly with my mother than before, and I'm truly happy now.